done with the abundance of the tithe collected in 2 Chronicles 31? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Chronicles on walking through the Bible.
Glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 2 Chronicles chapter 31, verses 11 to 21. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 31, verse 11. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Chronicles chapter 31, beginning at verse 11. Now Hezekiah commanded them to prepare rooms in the house of the Lord, and they prepared them. Then they faithfully brought in the offerings, the tithes, and the dedicated things. Cononiah the Levite had charge of them, and Shimei his brother was the next. Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ishmachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah were overseers under the hand of Cononiah and Shimei his brother at the commandment of Hezekiah the king and Azariah the ruler of the house of God. Kor the son of Imnah, the Levite, the keeper of the east gate, was over the freewill offering to God to distribute the offerings of the Lord, the offerings of the Lord and the most holy things. And under him were Eden, Minimim, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah, his faithful assistants in the cities of the priests, to distribute allotments to their brethren by divisions, to the great as well as the small. Besides these males from 3 years old and up, who were written in the genealogies, they distributed to everyone who entered the house of the Lord his daily portion for the work of his service, by his division, and to the priests who were written in the genealogy according to their father's house, and went to the Levites from 20 years old and up according to their work, by their divisions, and to all who were written in the genealogy, their little ones and their wives, their sons and daughters, the whole company of them, for in their faithfulness they sanctified themselves in holiness. Also for the sons of Aaron the priests, who were in the fields of the common lands of their cities. In every single city there were men who were designated by name to distribute portions to all the males among the priests and to all who were listed by the genealogies among the Levites. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and he did what was good and right and true before the Lord his God. And in every work that he began in the service of the house of God, in the law and in the commandment, to seek his God, he did it with all his heart. So he prospered. In this chapter and the last, we have events not recorded for us in the book of 2 Kings. Sure, 2 Kings told us of Hezekiah's righteousness and his removing the idolatry from Judah, but the writer of 2 Kings was much more focused on giving us the history of the nation of Judah under Hezekiah's reign, and so he spent considerable time discussing the attack of Sennacherib of Syria, something we'll cover again, the Lord willing, in the next chapter, as well as some other noteworthy historical events that took place during Hezekiah's reign. The chronicler, however, is much more focused on the religious condition of Judah. He focuses heavily on Hezekiah's Reformation movement to bring Judah back into a right relationship with God. We get his cleansing of the temple and sanctification of the priests and Levites. We see Judah's observance of the first Passover under Hezekiah's reign. We see the removal of not only all the idols, but all the high places to worship at too, thus removing the stumbling block and temptation to worship idols at those places. And then in this chapter, we not only have the resumption of the daily temple worship, but we have Hezekiah going about restoring obedience to other portions of the law as well, such as tithing. Tithing today is vastly misunderstood. First day of the week giving, found in 1 Corinthians 16, is not the same as tithing in the Old Testament. Why? Because the tithe wasn't simply monetary. It was 10% of whatever you owned, including animals and crops. Moreover, the purpose of the tithe was not only for the maintenance of the temple, it was for the provisions for the priests and Levites who didn't possess land like the rest of Israel did, so that they could eat and gain materials for clothing as well. Today, the church does not have clergy, priests to care for in the same way, and although the church can support those who preach the gospel according to 1 Corinthians 9, these preachers are not priests appointed under some order of succession like the priesthood of the Old Testament was. The church also has the responsibility to spread the gospel and care for needy Christians, showing us another difference between tithing and New Testament giving. And then, of course, the amount to be given is different. Tithing was a straight 10%, while New Testament giving is as we've been prospered. This doesn't mean that Christians now have the ability to be stingy with our giving, for all should want the work of the church to flourish. It's just God has now left it up to each Christian to give according to his situation, as there now isn't a large priesthood to care for, simply the needs of the local congregation. The tithe commanded by Hezekiah wasn't to be a special tithe, rather a resumption of what had been commanded under the law of Moses, so that the priest could attend to the work of the Lord. And unlike what we might expect, which would be grumbling with people think they were being taxed, the people of Judah gave with gladness. In fact, they gave so much, there was much abundance left over. What was going to happen to all of the abundance? Well, Hezekiah instructed the priests to prepare some of the rooms of the temple, side rooms built by Solomon, and store the abundance in there. The priests did these things, and so all of the priests and Levites who were eligible to receive distributions under the law received them along with their families. This is exactly what the Lord desired. It wasn't a tax on his people. It was provisions for his servants. And when the people obeyed the word of the Lord, as they were doing here in the days of Hezekiah, then they prospered, just as God had promised they would back in Deuteronomy. Hezekiah's reign was marked by a return to adhering to the law of Moses, which again shows us it existed at that time and was not an invention of the Babylonian captivity. During Hezekiah's reign, though, there was a power growing in the region that was expanding its territory and influence, and that was Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser began the Assyrian captivity of Israel with the first wave, mostly from the north of Israel. Shalmaneser and Sennacherib, the next two kings of Assyria, finished the job in 722 BC, thus leaving Judah on her own as the people of God in the Promised Land. Sennacherib, though, didn't want to stop with Israel, though. He wanted to expand further and threaten Judah as well. We'll see how that goes, beginning the Lord willing in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verses 1 to 8, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.